Good morning, friends and lovers. I'm taking that today from Robert and Amy Nasir from 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir, which I'm going to link down in the description. Every time that I go and listen to their videos, I get so inspired and so grateful that I am not alone in this universe. So please, please check them out, y'all. I cannot recommend them enough. If there's any one message that jives so beautifully with my own that, makes my life better, and I know will make your life better as well. It's their message. Check them out. They're really beautiful people, and it's going to change your life. So check that out in the description. And thank you again so much for coming back and joining me here. I'm going to make sure in each video I take a moment to express my gratitude to you for being here with me, and my gratitude to myself for choosing to be here and talk with you and grow my life and be introspective and think deeply about my ideas and my experiences, because that's what's going to propel me into the future of my creation that I have intended, and I want it. It's the future that I want. So thank you so much for coming today. So last night I had a really difficult moment, and in that moment I felt like a fraud, and I feel this way often. I know I've mentioned it before in previous videos about this deep feeling of being a liar, and it makes me think of something essential that I got from Ayn Rand. There's, I would say, 3 quotes that have really impacted me from her message that just have changed my entire life. And one of the most important is contradictions do not exist. If you feel that you are facing a contradiction, check your premises. You will find that one of them is wrong. And the time that I first heard this, again, comes from my little brother. I will tell you, man, I call him. I go to him anytime that I'm truly facing something deep and powerful. And what, the last time that I talked to him, he talked to me about, journal, Emily, so that you can do these things without needing me, without, relying on me. Because that's a part of being my own work and not being codependent. And I super just took that information, and I'm doing the work here, y'all. So, back in the day, 2015, my little brother said to me, anxiety comes from holding 2 ideas that can't both be true at the same time. Contradictions do not exist. If I'm holding 2 contradictory ideas, they clash with each other. And that creates conflict inside of me. And that conflict expresses itself through my feelings. My feelings are there to tell my mind a message that I'm experiencing some kind of thing and I need to address it. It's just like, when you start feeling an itch, it's because you've been bitten or something. The itch is a way for your body to grab your mind's attention and put it onto that particular, that area that needs something to be addressed. And emotions are like that too. So when I feel anxiety, that comes from holding on to 2 essentially contradictory ideas, and contradictions do not exist. The knowledge of that, that's something that I just accept, that contradictions do not exist. I'm sure there's a ton of more philosophy that goes behind that, but that's something that I have accepted at face value so that I can be able to explore my ideas and come to a conclusion that all things have integrated with each other and that they work together like a wonderful puzzle. Because to me, what that really means is that reality is all one fluid thing, that there's no part of reality that doesn't fit into the rest of reality and is outside of it. Just like, mysticism is this thing outside of reality. So then, is any other thing that is a contradiction. And this actually fits into something that I read in Aristotle's work, which I super loved. It was in the Physics, where he said, anytime that there is something that doesn't exist, like it's an anti-concept, you have to put no in front of it, which, in Greek is a. So atomos, atom, means uncuttable. Nothing, no thing. There's not a word for nothing that identifies itself. You take an identity that already exists and then you put no in front of it, or not, like antimatter, like or antithesis. I don't know, that it just like if there is a concept that is a non-concept, it doesn't have its own word. You have to rely on a word that exists within reality and then put a no in front of it. So that those kind of things just give me confidence that reality is all this one thing, that it is knowable, that it's consistent, and that, if I'm facing a contradiction, it's because my thoughts do not fully align and integrate with each other to tell me the story about reality, to give me context about reality. So contradictions do not exist. If you feel that you are facing a contradiction, check your premises. You will find that one of them is wrong. Check your premises. And this is part of what it means for me to think deeply and to care deeply, is to check my premises. I'm going to talk briefly about the spiral of integration. And I forget where this comes from because my little brother told me about it and I don't know who to credit for it. Probably Nathaniel Branden or Ayn Rand or Leonard Peikoff, because this is when he was reading a ton of Ayn Rand and Leonard Peikoff, and then also Nathaniel Branden at that time, to learn more about therapy and introspection. So the spiral of integration, usually when you think of a spiral and you think of spiraling down, it's a negative thing, right? Like you're spiraling out of control. But this spiral of integration is actually really cool. You learn something new, right? I learned something new and I see it around in the things around my life. And as I start to integrate it, I start seeing it more as like a concept. And then I start to see it as a principle. And when I get down to the bottom of this spiral is when I connect with the most radical, like to the root, the most simple, radical, fundamental idea that I had not quite correct, or maybe even completely wrong. At that point, once I've gone through, looking at my life, how it contradicts, going through the concepts that contradict and coming down to the principle of the contradiction, I can replace that principle. Once I replace that principle, I start coming back up through the spiral of integration, and I start seeing concepts and I'm like, oh wait, that concept doesn't align. And I get rid of it and I change it. And then as I go out and I experience more things, just, random things throughout my life and little instances, I start acting different, making new choices because I have fully integrated that concept. And maybe once I'm out here again, up in just the everyday interactions, I start noticing that something that doesn't really align, and the spiral starts all over again, where I'm like, oh wait, this doesn't look quite right. And it will address a new principle that is just nearby to that other one. And through this series of integration, where I come from the basic, most experiences down into the concepts, all the way down to the principle, and realign myself, my life only gets better. It gets I increase my efficacy, and my efficacy, right? That word efficacy is my ability to achieve what I mean to achieve through my thoughts and my actions. When I want to go feed myself, I choose healthy food instead of junk food, because I know that my body needs vitamins and minerals and the macronutrients that I need. So when I'm thinking of changing my ideas, and I come across an experience like I had last night where I feel like a fraud, I need to review that. I need to review that deeply because it's important. If I'm facing a contradiction like that, and I said the same thing before about positive affirmations, where, in my video about how to do positive affirmations properly, I don't want to say things that I just dismiss all of my experiences and I say something that's I cannot agree with and try to just say it so much that eventually I believe it. That's not how it works. I have to build up my concepts to be able to, really integrate those positive affirmations. If I don't ever do that spiral of integration, when I really come across something that's horrible or, hard for me to deal with, all of those surface level things that I have said will mean nothing because the principle at the bottom, I still believe it. I still believe it deeply, even pre-rationally. It's going to come up in my brain and say, here's evidence that you have been ignoring. This evidence shows that all of the words that you've said are utter garbage and you're garbage and blah, 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 blah. And I have not done the growing. I'm still in this place of hurt and upset and destruction and contradiction. And what is fraud? Fraud is a type of lie, and lies are contradictions with reality. Part of the things that I deal with when I feel like a fraud, one of the biggest ones is going for disability. I know that I have the capacity for productivity. But I also know that the way that I pursue productivity is so broken that I am not a reliable employee. That I just am not eligible in the traditional sense of, maintaining employment consistently in a way that's going to provide for myself and my son and keep us protected. I have lost my home multiple times. I have lost all of my belongings, and then I lean on my family and they're fucking tired of it, man. Nobody wants to just come around and pick up my messes all of the time. And, these messes, I need to be responsible for myself and for the messes that I create. And also I need to be realistic about what is this mess, I often have to remind myself that it's like, having diabetes and then not caring for myself. If I didn't properly care for myself when I have diabetes, I'm going to crash all of the freaking time and cause messes. And it's not because I'm not sick. And I'm just like saying, oh, diabetes ruins my life. It's because I have diabetes and I'm not properly caring for it. Right now, while I am not working, I'm doing incredible work on myself. I'm changing my life. I'm changing particularly the way that I parent. That's a huge part because, I know that my life is fucked up, right? Like and you know what, y'all? I'm just going to be cursing on today's video because this is the depth of my feeling and it's just appropriate to show the destruction that I feel. It's strong and it's powerful and it's visceral to show the destruction that I feel. And, I have fucked up in my parenting. And I am already screwed. Like the damage that has happened to me has already happened. With my son, he is that fresh opportunity because he is a new individual and it's him. It's not up to me. I mean, it's up to me to treat him well, but I don't own him. I don't own him. And I'm doing something that's really terrible to a fresh new opportunity that I am that first interaction of hopefully building him up, helping him go through the development that's going to happen in his body in a way that supports that development so that he can be a whole person, a person who does not face, a major disruption in his development, so that he can be an efficacious adult, an adult who is able to do the things that he sets out to do because his mind and his heart and his spirit and his emotions are fully integrated and aligned with doing what he wants to do. That he is able to experience reality and commune with it and understand it and understand his role within it such that he does a good job, So when I think of I am a fraud, it really comes down to trying to resolve this conflict between knowing that I have an illness and feeling that I am making my responsibility for my life other people's problems. And that, in the terms of disability, that's all of the taxpayers, that are forced to pay for my life. I'm not leaning on my family to pay for my life. I'm leaning instead on the people who pay into this system, whether they want to or not. At this point, it's forced. So, there's all kinds of rationalizations about why, you know, out of all of the government wasteful spending, my contribution to that is so, small. But it still comes down to the principle of taking from others whether they want to help me or not. And it should be volitional. Just like, I'm not just allowing any old person to come into my home and take whatever they need. I don't have a soup kitchen out of my home that I'm forced to cook for people from the food that I have in my own home and provide for them. This is that same kind of principle. And when you think of operating by principle, this is an important principle to pay attention to and to execute it right. But, for my own life, I want to live. I want to not hurt myself and my son. And these are complex issues. There's a lot of different answers like, hey, you should have your kid taken away from you and put into a stable home. That's one of the answers out there. And what a scary, horrible thing to think that, instead of accepting government help, that instead I am surrendering my child. And that to me is like surrendering my own soul. He's the thing that made me come from feeling like this empty, disgusting husk to being someone who carries this precious child inside of my body while I was pregnant with him. And then caring for this precious child, the hands and the heart that feeds and cares. So even though I was still despicable, in my early journey of healing, I knew that I had work to do to protect something that was truly precious. And, one of the things that happened really early on is, I was breastfeeding and it's exhausting, and I was waking up every, 2-3 hours to feed my baby. And it was one of the times when he woke up and he was like a few months old, maybe just picking up his head, from the ground. So maybe anywhere between 4 and 6 months old. And I shushed him back to sleep one night where he woke up to feed. And I was so tired that in my, groggy state, I didn't really recognize that he needed to feed. I just shushed him and patted him on the back and soothed him until he went back to sleep. And when I woke up, I realized that I hadn't fed my baby. Like, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I went to soothe my son and be like, hey, you know, it's time to wake up. Hey, Marcus. And he wouldn't stir. I had killed my baby. That's what I felt in my heart. I had killed my baby. I was so scared. And, you know, with just a little bit more stirring, he woke up and he looked into my face and he smiled, the biggest smile. The smile that said, here's my mom, my home. Here is the person that I know when I look at her, I'm cared for. Because he woke up just so gently, and that smile wasn't already on his face. He recognized me. His eyes focused on me. He recognized me. And then that radiant light inside of him came out through this smile. I knew at that moment that I was worthy of love. So when I deal with these feelings of being a fraud, I do have to deeply think about, how do I change myself? Like, you know, I could continue to wallow in bed and treat my son like garbage and, you know, and not care for my needs and keep relying on people to come over here and pick up my mess. Even while not working, I could continue to be that, you know, person who creates garbage in her life, you know, who creates messes for other people to come clean up and does not accept responsibility. I can remain being that person, but I'm driven. You know, I'm no longer working, and I am working instead on my health. My health is my job. My parenting is my job. And I really, really want that. And deeply exploring that and caring about the feeling of fraud and caring about where it comes from is how I deal with that, you know, how I get it to lessen. Not by just saying, oh, I'm not a fraud, but caring about, why do I feel that way? Why shouldn't I feel that way? What is the truth? What are the facts? How can I integrate this? How can I go through this spiral and find the principle, the radical idea at the root, at the base of this understanding? What is that thing that I must change? And how can I circle it back up through my integrations so that when I go through, like yesterday, I was triggered actually by a specific thing that always triggers me. But it came up in, you know, it's a children's movie that I was hurt during the children's movie. And the person who was hurting me was whispering the words from the movie into my ear. You know, this is our little secret. And it deeply hurt me. And it's the one trigger that I know for certain, like, oh, that's a trigger. And my son was doing a schoolwork assignment where they watched this movie and they had to do clips from it. And I am determined to help my son with school. And I was just like, you know what, Emily, this is the silliest thing, that you can't even help your child because you want to just be like, oh, I have PTSD. I can't do this. I'm so helpless. I can't do this. I was just so upset with myself in that moment that, you know, I decided to ignore my needs. And then it ended up triggering me. Oh, surprise. And, you know, I ended up, one of the first things that happened was just like, you know, feeling scared and upset and sick to my stomach, which, you know, it's so underneath everything else. It started with just feeling physically ill, like I was going to throw up. And then I recognized, oh, this is anxiety. And as soon as I thought, oh, this is anxiety, I'm like, you know what, my entire YouTube channel is garbage. All of this stuff is garbage. I am just a liar and a fraud. And as soon as the word fraud came up into my mind, this whole thing, you know, it was another trigger to think of, like, you going for disability, you're a fraud. And I need to work through that. You know, like I said before, you know, if I have all of these surface level messages, the moment that stuff goes to crap is the moment that those basic radical ideas that I hold come to the surface and just wreak havoc, because it's like, this is evidence. This is evidence for the thing that you actually believe. And evidence, don't ignore evidence. You know, you cannot ignore evidence, because that's a contradiction, right? I'm holding two separate ideas or experiences that cannot mesh with each other. I'm not a fraud. And if there is anything about me that gives evidence of being a fraud, I need to find that and resolve it. Because I know who I am and who I want to be. And if there are actions or understandings that I have that contradict that, I'm going to find them. I'm going to root them out. And I'm going to change myself, because I know who it is that I am. I know the thing that pulls me, that spirituality that I talked about in one of my other videos. I know what it is that pulls me. And I'm going to be that person with intention. So think about that deeply. Contradictions do not exist. If you feel that you are facing a contradiction, check your premises. You will find that one of them is wrong. Go through that spiral of integration. Be happy about spiraling for once. Look forward to spiraling. I really hope this message helps y'all. I know that thinking deeply about these things is essential for my own life and growth. I hope you keep coming back. Namaste, my friends.